Good evening, my cherished friends. Tonight I want to share with you the one quality, the single most important feeling that separates those who successfully manifest their desires from those who struggle endlessly despite knowing all the techniques, all the methods, all the so-called secrets. That quality is naturalness. Not excitement, not desperation, not even faith in the traditional sense. Naturalness. When I speak of naturalness, I'm referring to that quality of feeling completely normal about your desire being fulfilled. It's the difference between a man who has just won the lottery, jumping, screaming, unable to believe his good fortune, and a man who has been wealthy for 20 years, who handles prosperity with the same ease you handle breathing. One consciousness shouts, "Can you believe this is happening to me?" The other consciousness whispers, "Of course, this is who I am." The first man is experiencing his desire. The second man is being his desire. And it's the second man whose wealth will remain and multiply, while the first man's winnings will likely slip through his fingers within a few years. Why? Because naturalness is the signature of permanence. What feels natural to you must manifest and must remain. What feels unnatural, miraculous, or surprising will slip away as soon as the excitement fades. I learned this principle many years ago through a simple observation. I watched how people related to different aspects of their lives, and I noticed something fascinating. Everyone has some area of their life where they feel completely natural, completely at ease. For some it's their health, for others it's their relationships. For still others it's their creativity or intelligence. Whatever area feels natural to you, where you don't question it, don't worry about it, don't feel you need to prove it, that area remains stable in your life. You don't wake up each morning wondering if you'll still be intelligent. You don't check throughout the day to make sure you're still creative. You simply are these things, and because you are them naturally, they persist effortlessly. But notice the areas of your life where you struggle, where things feel like constant effort, where you experience lack or limitation. In these areas you lack naturalness. You're trying to be something rather than naturally being it. You're working to have something rather than naturally having it. A woman once approached me after a lecture in Los Angeles. She was impeccably dressed, clearly well educated, articulate. "Mr. Goddard," she said, "I can manifest small things easily. Parking spaces, chance encounters, minor synchronicities. But the big things, the things I really want, a truly fulfilling relationship, financial freedom, my dream career, these elude me no matter how much I imagine them. Why?" I studied her for a moment, then asked a simple question. "When you imagine a parking space, how do you feel?" She looked confused by the question. "I don't know, I expect it to be there, it's no big deal." "Exactly," I said. "And when you imagine your dream relationship or financial freedom?" Her entire demeanor changed. Her eyes widened, her breath quickened slightly. "I feel excited," she said, "sometimes almost too excited to contain it. My heart races. I think this would be so amazing. This would change everything." I studied her for a moment, then asked a simple question. "When you imagine a parking space, how do you feel?" She looked confused by the question. "I don't know. I expect it to be there. It's no big deal." "Exactly," I said. "And when you imagine your dream relationship or financial freedom?" Her entire demeanor changed. Her eyes widened, her breath quickened slightly. "I feel excited," she said, "sometimes almost too excited to contain it. My heart races. I think this would be so amazing. This would change everything." There, I told her, is your answer. You manifest parking spaces because they feel natural to you. You don't manifest your larger desires because they feel unnatural, extraordinary, almost unbelievable. Your excitement itself betrays your disbelief. She was silent for a long moment. "Are you saying I shouldn't be excited about my desires?" "I'm saying excitement is fine when your desire first appears to you. But if you're still excited about it after weeks or months of imagining it, you haven't made it natural yet. You're still treating it as something special, something outside your normal experience, something that would be amazing if it happened. And that very attitude keeps it from happening. This conversation reveals one of the most misunderstood aspects of manifestation. People think passion, excitement, and intense emotion are the keys to manifesting. They work themselves into ecstatic states, they feel overwhelming desire, they generate tremendous emotional intensity, and then they wonder why their desires don't manifest. The truth is this: intense emotion can help you identify what you want, but naturalness is what allows you to have it. Excitement says, "This would be wonderful if it happened." Naturalness says, "Of course this is mine. What else would it be?" Let me illustrate this with a story that demonstrates the power of naturalness perfectly. A young man came to study with me, desperate to become a successful writer. He had talent, certainly. He had dedication. He wrote every day, imagined his success every night, visualized his name on bestseller lists, felt the joy of critical acclaim. But month after month, year after year, rejection letters piled up. His work was never quite good enough. Publishers weren't interested. Agents didn't respond. One day, in frustration, he said to me, "Neville, I've done everything you teach. I imagine my success constantly. I feel it deeply. Why doesn't it manifest? Tell me," I said. "How does a successful writer feel to you?" His eyes lit up. Accomplished, validated, finally proven. It would feel like I'd made it, like all my struggles were worth it, like I stopped him. That's your problem right there. You're imagining being a successful writer as something that would prove you, validate you, elevate you. To you, being a successful writer is special, extraordinary, a transformation of who you currently are. But it would be, he protested. And that's why it isn't, I replied. Tell me, how do you feel about your ability to read? He looked puzzled. I don't understand. I read. It's natural. I've been reading since I was a child. Exactly. You don't imagine being able to read as special or extraordinary. You don't wake up excited that you can read. You don't feel you need to prove you can read. You simply read naturally, because it's who you are. That's the feeling you need about being a successful writer. I could see him struggling with this concept. But how can I feel natural about something I'm not yet? Oh, I said, there's your second problem. You believe you're not yet a successful writer. But in consciousness, the only reality, you can be a successful writer right now. Not trying to become one, not hoping to be one, but being one naturally as you're currently a reader. I gave him a specific practice. For the next month, I told him, stop imagining your success as a future event. Stop feeling excited about what it will be like when you make it. Instead, assume you've been a successful writer for years. Imagine the ordinariness of it. Imagine checking your book sales the way you currently check your email, routinely, without drama. Imagine interviews and book signings as just part of your normal working life. Make success feel boring, natural, taken for granted. He looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Make success feel boring. Not boring in a negative sense. I clarified. Natural. The way breathing is natural. The way your heartbeat is natural. The way your ability to read is natural. Success should feel so normal to you that it would be strange not to have it. This young man took my advice seriously. Over the next months, I watched a subtle but profound transformation occur in him. He stopped talking about his dreams with breathless excitement. He stopped imagining success as this miraculous future event. Instead, he began to carry himself as someone for whom success was simply normal. His writing improved, not because he tried harder, but because he wrote from a different consciousness. He submitted his work differently. Not desperately hoping for acceptance, but naturally expecting it. He spoke about his writing career differently, not as a dream he was chasing, but as a reality he was living. Within 6 months, he had his first book deal. Within 2 years, he had 3 published books and a growing readership. But here's what fascinated me. By the time his success manifested physically, he wasn't surprised or excited. He felt it was natural, obvious, exactly what should be happening. That's how you know naturalness has been achieved. when the manifestation feels inevitable rather than miraculous. But how do you cultivate this feeling of naturalness? How do you make the extraordinary feel ordinary? How do you take something you desperately want and make it feel like something you simply have? First, you must understand that naturalness comes from familiarity. Things feel natural when they're familiar, when you've experienced them often, when they're part of your regular existence. This is why I teach people to imagine their desire fulfilled, not once, not in one glorious imaginal act, but repeatedly until it becomes familiar. Imagine it so many times that it becomes boring. Imagine it so consistently that it loses its charge, its excitement, its special quality. When you first imagine your desire fulfilled, it's thrilling. Your heart races. Every detail seems precious and meaningful. This is natural. You're encountering something new in consciousness. But if you persist, if you imagine this same scene night after night, something remarkable happens. The thrill fades. The excitement diminishes. The scene becomes familiar, routine, ordinary. And this is exactly what you want. When your desire feels ordinary in imagination, it's ready to become ordinary in manifestation. A businessman once told me about his experience with this principle. He wanted to expand his small company into a major enterprise, but whenever he imagined this expansion, he felt overwhelmed with excitement and barely contained nervousness. It feels too big, he told me, too impossible. Every time I imagine owning a major company, I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. I instructed him to imagine not the moment of expansion, not the drama of growth, but simply the ordinary, day-to-day experience of being the owner of a large company. Imagine the routine of it, I said. Imagine answering emails, attending meetings, making decisions, all from the consciousness of someone for whom running a major company is perfectly normal. At first he found this difficult. His mind wanted the drama, the excitement, the specialness of success. But I insisted, make it boring, make it routine. Imagine it until you could do it in your sleep. He followed this practice faithfully, night after night. He imagined the ordinary activities of running a major company. Gradually, what had felt impossible began to feel possible. What had felt extraordinary began to feel ordinary. What had felt unnatural began to feel natural. The transformation in his actual business was remarkable. As his consciousness of being a major company owner became natural, his decisions changed. His behavior changed. His very presence changed. He began to naturally act in ways that someone running a major company would act. Within 18 months, his small company had grown into exactly the major enterprise he had been imagining. But by that time, it felt completely natural to him. He told me, "The strange thing is, I can barely remember when running a large company felt unusual. Now it just feels like who I am." This is the power of naturalness. When something feels natural to you in consciousness, it must manifest in your world, because consciousness is the only reality. But I must warn you about something that trips up many students. They try to force naturalness. They try to convince themselves that something feels natural when it doesn't. This doesn't work because consciousness cannot be fooled. True naturalness isn't an act you put on. It's a genuine feeling that develops through persistent imagining. You can't fake it, but you can cultivate it. Here's the key. You cultivate naturalness by removing the charge from your desire. Most people charge their desires with desperation, need, hope, excitement, or fear. All of these emotional charges keep the desire at arm's length, marking it as something special, something other, something not yet possessed. To remove the charge, you must imagine your desire so consistently that it becomes mundane. Imagine it until the thrill wears off. Imagine it until it's no longer exciting. Imagine it until it's just normal. Think about something you have that you once desperately wanted. Perhaps your current home, or your car, or your relationship, or your job. Remember how exciting it was when you first got it. Remember how you couldn't believe it was yours. Remember how special it felt. And now it's just your home, your car, your relationship, your job. It's familiar. It's normal. You don't wake up every morning marveling that you have it. It's simply part of your life. That's naturalness. And that's the feeling you want to cultivate about your desires before they manifest physically. A woman once told me about her experience manifesting marriage to a specific man. For months, she said, I imagined our wedding day. I felt the excitement, the joy, the thrill of finally being his wife. But nothing happened. He seemed no closer to proposing than when I started. Then one night, she continued, I was exhausted from imagining. I lay in bed, and almost without thinking, I imagined us in bed together, not on our honeymoon, but years into our marriage. I imagined it being so ordinary, so familiar, that I barely noticed it. I fell asleep from the sheer ordinariness of it. The next morning, something had shifted in me. When I saw him, I didn't feel the desperate hope I usually felt. I felt calm, natural, as if we were already married, and this was just another day. Within 2 weeks, he proposed. Within 3 months, we were married. But here's the interesting part, she concluded. By the time we actually got married, it didn't feel like a big event to me emotionally. It felt right, natural, inevitable, like something that had already happened long ago and we were just making it official. This is the ultimate sign that you've achieved naturalness. When your desire manifests, it feels obvious rather than miraculous. Now let me share with you a technique I've used successfully many times. I call it the boring technique, though there's nothing boring about its results. Choose your desire, whatever it is you want to manifest. Now, instead of imagining the exciting moment of getting it, imagine the most ordinary, mundane moment of having it. Imagine the boring, routine, everyday experience of living with your desire fulfilled. If you want wealth, don't imagine winning the lottery or receiving a windfall. Imagine casually paying a bill, glancing at your bank balance without concern, or making a routine purchase without checking the price. If you want love, don't imagine the first kiss or the proposal. Imagine a quiet Tuesday evening, doing something ordinary together, feeling the comfortable familiarity of being loved. If you want success, don't imagine the award ceremony or the moment of recognition. Imagine a regular workday doing what you love, it being perfectly normal and expected. The more ordinary, the more mundane, the more boring your imaginal act, the more powerful it is. Because ordinariness equals naturalness, and naturalness equals manifestation. I remember when I was manifesting my teaching career, I didn't imagine standing before large crowds receiving thunderous applause. Instead, I imagined sitting in a quiet room, preparing for a lecture the way a teacher who had been teaching for years would prepare, routinely, naturally, without drama. I imagined answering letters from students. I imagined the ordinary work of teaching. I imagined it until it felt completely natural, until it would have felt strange not to be teaching. By the time I actually stood before my first audience, it felt like I had been doing it for years. There was no nervousness, no sense of impossibility, no feeling that I was doing something extraordinary. It felt natural, and because it felt natural, it unfolded naturally. Here's another crucial aspect of naturalness that many overlook. Naturalness extends to how you relate to waiting. When something is natural to you, you don't anxiously wait for it. You don't desperately check for signs of it. You don't worry about when it will appear. Think about something you know will naturally occur. Perhaps you know the sun will rise tomorrow, or you know spring will follow winter, or you know you'll be hungry at mealtime. Do you anxiously wait for these things? Do you worry they might not happen? No, because they're natural to you. This is how you must relate to your desire, not anxiously waiting for it to arrive, but naturally knowing it will manifest because it's already yours in consciousness. A gentleman once asked me, "But Neville, how can I feel natural about something that hasn't happened yet? Doesn't that require denial of current reality?" I replied, "You're thinking of naturalness as a relationship with physical circumstances. But true naturalness is a relationship with consciousness. In consciousness, your desire is already fulfilled. Making that fulfillment feel natural in consciousness is not denial, it's recognition of the only reality that exists. Think of it this way," I continued. Before you learned to read, reading felt unnatural, impossible. But someone who could read knew it was natural. The naturalness wasn't about current ability, it was about consciousness. Now that you can read, reading feels utterly natural. Has reading itself changed? No, your consciousness of reading has changed. Your desire is the same, I concluded. It doesn't feel natural now because your consciousness of it is still treating it as special, future, other. But in consciousness, it can be natural right now. And once it's natural in consciousness, it must become natural in experience. Let me share one final story that illustrates the ultimate power of naturalness. Years ago, I knew a woman who wanted to move from a small apartment to a beautiful house by the ocean. Her current circumstances made this seem impossible. She had modest income, no savings for a down payment, and housing by the ocean was extremely expensive in her area. Most people would have imagined winning the lottery, receiving an inheritance, or some other dramatic intervention. But this woman understood naturalness. Instead, she began to imagine the most ordinary moment she could think of in her oceanside home, making coffee in the morning and glancing out at the water. That's all. No drama, no excitement. Just making coffee, glancing at the ocean, it being perfectly normal and natural that she lived there. She imagined this scene every morning for months. She told me it became so familiar that sometimes she'd wake up and for a brief moment expect to see the ocean before remembering she was still in her apartment. Within a year, through a series of events that seemed remarkable to others, but felt natural to her, she was living in that house by the ocean. And when she invited me to visit, I watched her make coffee and glance at the ocean with such casual familiarity that you'd think she'd been doing it for 20 years. The strange thing, she told me, is that I can't remember when this felt unusual. It just feels like where I've always belonged. That, my friends, is the power of naturalness. When your desire becomes so natural in consciousness that it would feel strange not to have it, that's when it manifests. Not before, not through force or effort, but through the irresistible power of naturalness itself. So tonight I invite you to examine your desires. Which ones are you holding at arm's length with excitement, hope, or desperation? Which ones are you treating as special, extraordinary, miraculous? Those are the ones you need to make natural. Those are the ones you need to imagine not as future possibilities, but as present realities. Those are the ones you need to strip of their charge and their drama and their specialness. Make them boring. Make them ordinary. Make them natural. Imagine them until they feel so familiar that it would be strange not to have them. When naturalness becomes your dwelling place, manifestation becomes your inevitable experience. Not through struggle, not through effort, not through hope or prayer, but through the simple, natural, inevitable unfolding of consciousness into form. The feeling of naturalness, this is the secret. Cultivate it, dwell in it, make it your home. And watch as everything you desire becomes not a miracle, but simply the natural expression of who you are. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and you are the operant power in your world. I'll see you in the next video.